fourth day of the general debate of the United Nations General Assembly is underway as world leaders continue to address global challenges. Mexican government declares orange alert in some municipalities of the country due to tropical storm Ian. On Friday, the Israeli army launched an attack on the southern suburb of Beirut in Lebanon as the Zionist regime intensified its assault on the country. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Heads of state and government representatives continued to take the floor Thursday on the fourth day of the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly. Our special envoy to New York, Jorge Estoso, with the details.
Thank you. Fourth day of the general debate here at the United Nations, and in the afternoon was the turn of the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We're talking about Mr. Ralph Gonsalves, and was very interesting his words because he mentioned about the ghost of the Monroe Doctrine, saying that it's still alive and kicking in Latin America and violating some international rights with the implantation of sanctions to different countries, including, of course, Venezuela and Cuba. Also, he mentions that it's unacceptable at all the situation of the genocide against the Palestinian people and the disparities going on in the world throughout the banking system, the financial system. But very interesting that he put emphasis that doctrine of James Monroe, we're talking about a former president of the United States that 200 years ago said that America for the Americans, meaning for the United Statesans. And from then on, many incidents we have lived in our region. Was very interesting security in the morning when the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, was doing his speech. The highlight of his speech was not what he said, was that at the very moment that he stands next to the podium, most of the delegations, a lot of delegations, stood up and left the room. It was a very clear sign, was very representative of what's going on since the beginning of this General Assembly. The applause, the applauding that we've seen and witnessed and heard when the Palestinian delegation took over, and the repudiation, the general repudiation of the international community against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Earlier in the morning also, the members of the group of the Friends in Defense of the Charter of the United Nations met. There were about 18 members of that group, and also they put emphasis that at the very beginning there was presided by the foreign minister of Venezuela, Ivan Gil, who said that the case of the genocide in Gaza was the confirmation of the lack of strength, for the strengthening that it doesn't have the United Nations, that they don't have the force, the strength to stop the genocide. So far, that has been the highlights of the morning. In the afternoon, there continue some of the speeches, and we are here to bring you everything that's going on in this 79th General Assembly at the United Nations. We get back to you now.
In the framework of the Russian Energy Week Forum, the Deputy Prime Minister of Russia, Alexander Novak, and the Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, evaluated the prospect for joint projects in the field of non-energy applications of nuclear technologies. In this regard, as the forum is underway in Moscow, the senior officials vowed to contribute to solving problems in areas such as medicine, agriculture, education, and industry, as part of the expansion of mutual cooperation in the nuclear energy field. In addition, Rodriguez and Novak discussed cooperation in the areas of oil and gas, including the coordination of positions within the Gas Exporting Countries Forum and the Organization of Oil Exporting Countries OPEC+, and conditions for the supply of equipment for industrial projects in Venezuela's fuel and energy complex.
And we have reviewed with Vice President Novak, who is in charge of all energy matters of this great country. We have reviewed our bilateral energy agenda, a bilateral agenda that is very broad. Venezuela and Russia, we are important partners in joint oil ventures. We also have important gas projects that will have a great boost from 2027 onwards, and we are already in the process of study of exploration. So we have reviewed our energy agenda with announcements that will be known in the future by the hand of President Nicolas Maduro, how to deepen these energy cooperation, defending from a common adversary, that is those who want to rely on those who want to support us in the future. We have reviewed our energy agenda with announcements that will be made in the future by President Nicolas Maduro, but how to deepen our energy cooperation in order to defend ourselves from a common adversary, that is those who want to rely on our energy resources and those who add economically to our countries, and from a common policy of cooperation and research.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. The second day of strikes by Argentina's university workers is underway on Friday in rejection of measures promoted by the government. Students, professors, and non-teaching workers reacted against the measures, which seek to veto a law on the financing of higher educational centers in the public sector. The professors of the University of Buenos Aires denounced that the government only allocated half of the resources requested by the National University Council. These mobilizations are added to those of other sectors demanding better working conditions and denouncing massive layoffs in the public administration sector. In Argentina, the policies implemented by the government of Javier Milei led to a historical increase in poverty, which reached almost 53% of the population in the first semester of 2024. The National Institute of Statistics and Census published this September 26 its report on the incidence of poverty and indigence in the country. According to the data released by the agency, the adjustment policies of the National Executive generated more than 5 million additional poor people, for a total of 25 million people. Meanwhile, the indigence index, understood as the poor whose income is not even enough to buy the minimum amount of food needed for subsistence, reached around 18% and affects 8.5 million people.
We got into this situation after the first adjustments were made, and we could no longer solve our economic problems. On top of that, I lost my job, and everything became much more difficult. So, unfortunately, we have to go to community kitchens in order to survive.
Former President of Bolivia, Evo Morales, called off nationwide rallies and roadblocks that were to begin on September 30. On a meeting held with his supporters, Morales decided to suspend rallies and roadblocks to advance in preparing an event for next October 12. In statements to Radio Panamericana de Bolivia, the former head of state explained that as they didn't want to affect the population, they made such a decision. Meanwhile, contacts are progressing with the Ombudsman to set the basis for a dialogue with the government of President Luis Arce. In Bolivia, former prosecutor Cesar Siles was appointed as the new Minister of Justice and Institutional Transparency on the night of September 26. During a ceremony held at the presidential residence, Luis Arce appointed the new minister to take place of Ivan Lima, who resigned his functions irrevocably. Cesar Siles, who held the position of Attorney General for 1 year, has a master's degree in constitutional law and judicial public management, as well as degrees in public management and higher education. He has also held positions in national and international institutions and was a judge of the Administrative Court of the Latin American Integration Association and served as a magistrate of the Court of Justice during the year 2010. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Mexican government declares orange alert in some municipalities of the country due to the tropical storm Yon. According to President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, the storm has left 5 people dead so far along the coast of the state of Guerrero amid floods and landslides. The president praised the emergency teams, which are still working in the rescue of people trapped in Acapulco. On the other hand, temporary shelters are being set up to house over 97,000 victims who also need food, water, medicine, and mattresses. After losing intensity on Friday, Tropical Storm Helene races northward in the United States, moving through Georgia. The storm made landfall in the state of Florida as a powerful Category 4 hurricane, bringing about strong winds and heavy rains that left around 4 million homes and businesses in the impacted regions reportedly without power. In this context, at least 20 people were killed in the United States. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp announced 11 deaths in his state, while 7 of the reported fire victims are in Florida, with 1 each North and South Carolina. Damaging wind gusts will continue over portions of Georgia, the Carolinas, Tennessee, and Kentucky today. On Friday, the Israeli army launched an attack on the southern suburb of Beirut, the Lebanese capital, as Zionist regime intensifies its assault on the country. The series of airstrikes targeted the residential area of Hadet Reg, leaving dead and wounded at the scene. The attack, for which Israeli media reported 2,000 tons of explosives were dropped, erased a complete block in the area, bringing down several residential buildings. The Israeli forces' strikes in Lebanon in past weeks have left more than 700 people dead, according to reports from the country's Ministry of Health. Precisely, Friday's attack in Beirut came shortly after Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the United Nations, promising Israel's campaign in Lebanon would continue. On Friday, volunteers are committed to assist the displaced persons with provisions, including food, at a soup kitchen in Beirut, Lebanon. Since Monday, the Israeli occupying army has intensified their shellings across Lebanon, leading to over 600 deaths so far. As a result, around 440,000 people have been displaced and found shelters to save their lives. Thus, at the reception centers, volunteers not only cooked food without any sponsorship, but also they donated some food provisions, and distributing all of it is as an emergency response to help the people in need. Some of them shared their experiences with us.
mortadella sandwiches, 300 bulgur and tomato meals, and now we will prepare 400 more bulgur and tomato meals, and we will prepare more as well.
The situation is not easy because the demand is very high, and we are just individuals. It seems that the crisis will be prolonged.
We sent mattresses, cushions, and covers to the people in Tyre, and whenever we receive donations of covers, cushions, and blankets, we immediately distribute them to the colder, more remote areas.
In Israel, a ballistic missile launched by the Yemeni army hit the city of Tel Aviv, injuring at least 17 people and closing the Ben Gurion airport. Hebrew media reported that the attack caused several explosions in the early hours of Friday morning after the missile overcame the Israeli air defenses and forced people to hide in bomb shelters. Yemeni forces also carried out simultaneous attacks on the port of Eilat, located on the shores of the Red Sea. The attacks come less than 2 weeks after a hypersonic ballistic missile also hit the Israeli capital. In Yemen, thousands of people and tribes gathered this Friday in massive marches and vigils to show their solidarity with the Palestinian and Lebanese people and in support of their resistance. The marches were held in support and victory for the sons of the Palestinian and Lebanese people in the confrontation against the Zionist regime and condemnation of the crimes committed by Israel against the two peoples. During the day, the demonstrators affirmed that the Yemeni people will continue to help the Palestinians and Lebanese until the Israeli aggression is stopped and the siege against their territories is lifted. The participants raised the Yemeni and Palestinian flags while condemning the continuous genocide to which they are subjected and exposed by the Israeli occupation forces supported by the United States. Landslide at an illegal gold mine in Indonesia leaves at least 15 dead and more than 20 people missing. The disaster struck at a remote location in the West Sumatra province after heavy rains fell in the area. The National Search and Rescue Agency prepared an elite team to support the search for victims of the incident in the mining area. In addition, the government established a command post on the ground to facilitate rescue operations, evacuations of victims, and coordinate strategies in view of the unstable area. According to the Regional Disaster Mitigation Agency, efforts are ongoing to find the victims. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.